Hey everybody, I just want to take a quick moment to welcome everyone to JUS 261. Um, and it is Monday, beginning of Module 1. So a couple things you can do for me as soon as you can. Number one would be to make sure that you go into the discussion board area and introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself. Um, so we have an idea as to who's all in the class. Um, and that is, that's a very important first part of any online class. So we all get to know who each other are. Okay, so again, when you have time, please make sure you spend a few minutes in going over to the discussion board area and go ahead and introduce yourself. Um, this is a class that's basically going to be talking about the court structure here in the United States. And the United States has a dual court system. We have federal courts, state courts, and under state courts also includes local courts. So over the next several weeks, we're going to be talking about federal courts, state courts, and we're going to be using a scenario to help you understand how these courts operate. So after you introduce yourself and you get settled in, some point within the next module week or two, please take a look at the final grading rubric and the assignment so you have an idea as to what it is that we're going to be doing. I will be helping you along the way, and I'll be talking about my short module lectures here in just a minute. But it's good to become familiar with the course material early on. So again, introduce yourself, begin to explore a little bit, and take a look at the final project that's associated with this class. We're also going to be spending some time. We're going to discuss state courts and federal courts. Again, like I said, we're also going to be talking about judges. We're going to be examining, for example, the qualifications to become a judge at the federal level, at the state level, and then for the local courts. And I think you'll begin to see some diversity. You may learn something new, something unusual that is associated with being a federal judge. So we're going to be understanding those positions here in the first couple of weeks. And as we begin to examine the role of the courts today, I think what we're going to find is the courts are being tasked with dealing with a lot of social issues today. Items that might have been resolved at some other level, people are now taken to court. And so as you begin to understand the duties and responsibilities of judges at both the federal and state level, hopefully you'll begin to appreciate the complex nature of those positions. We could talk about federal judges real quick here just for a moment. When President Trump drafted his first travel ban to limit immigrants from certain countries, it was a federal judge that put the kibosh on that until both sides were able to provide arguments. Ultimately, that ban and that decision went to the United States Supreme Court, and it was somewhat modified, but you begin to understand the influence and the significant role and power that a federal judge has over such complex topics such as presidential orders and directives and so forth, where that may not necessarily be the case at the state court level. So this week, I have you looking at the federal court structure. There is a real nice short video that I put in the announcement section. So if you can, take a look at that. This is a real good video on how the federal court system is structured, and I think you'll find it very beneficial. Okay, and if you remember anything from your civic days, in terms of our government, the federal government has significant power in this country, and what power they don't have is relinquished to the states under the 10th Amendment. So constitutional issues based on the U.S. Constitution is handled by federal courts. So if a judge rules, for example, or the Supreme Court rules, for example, an issue on police search and seizure, that's the law of the land. States can't deviate or not comply with that law. Okay, so it's going to go back to some of the basic concepts of basic civics and the Supremacy Clause, which gives the federal courts that type of power in dealing with issues of national importance, and usually things associated with the U.S. Constitution, your First Amendment right to free speech, or your Fourth Amendment right to unreasonable searches and seizures by the government, or the Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights to your ability to have a fair trial and not to be compelled to testify against yourself. All of these things are very important, and so at the federal level, it applies to all of us. Because we are in unique situations. Not only are we citizens of the United States, subject to federal law, but we also are citizens of our individual home states, so we're also subject to state law. So we have two separate court systems that sort of operate and give citizens some level of recourse or action. So if you're going to file a lawsuit against somebody or some organization or some company, one of the things you may have to determine is who has jurisdiction. In other words, can I take this lawsuit to federal court? Can I take it to state court? So those are the kind of things that we'll be discussing here over the next couple of weeks. So this week, your discussion board assignment has you looking at whether or not federal judges should be elected or appointed. And right now, federal judges are appointed. They're appointed by the President of the United States, and then they are confirmed by the United States Senate. They have an appointment for life unless they commit some level of high misdemeanor or something along those lines, and then they can be impeached by the Senate, and so then they're ultimately removed from the bench. Doesn't happen very often. But we'll be looking at whether or not you think that that's a good system. In other words, should they be appointed by the President, confirmed by the Senate, and have a tenure for life? Or, as is commonly associated with many state court systems, many state judges and local judges are subject to the election process. In other words, the people vote to keep a judge on the bench. There's pros and cons to each, and so this week you're really looking at federal court positions and whether or not you think those judges should be there for life, or whether or not they should be subject to an election process. So it really boils down to accountability or judicial independence. All right. This week we also have a short paper due, and you're writing it on the federal court system. So that video I think should be helpful, as well as your readings from chapter 3 and 5. Just so you know, every week I will have a short module lecture in which I go over the key assignment for the week, usually a writing assignment. I fill in a lot of the blanks for you, so hopefully you'll take advantage of that, and please listen to the short module lecture, take notes, and that in conjunction with your readings and the announcement, hopefully will address any questions you have. If you have any particular questions, you can always email me, call or text me, or in discussion board there's an area for you to ask questions, and then I usually check that a couple times a day, and so I'm able to go ahead and respond back to you. Okay? So, again, welcome aboard. This week we'll be talking about federal courts, federal judges. This course can be somewhat demanding, so it's important that you stay up on your work. It's important that you stay up on the readings, listen to my short lectures, and carefully look at our announcements for the week. Okay? Again, if you ever have any questions or concerns, you know how to get a hold of me. All right, let's have a great week, and I'll see you next Monday. Bye.